for like a question.
Okay, we're going to get started, everyone. Thanks for being here this afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the first of 3 public interviews of finalists for the position of Dean of the College of Liberal Arts here at Nichols. We will host a second finalist on Thursday and a third finalist on Friday of this week. Like today, all public interviews will be held here in 152 IO Hall from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock p.m. Hope you can make those other meetings as well. As you all know, my name is Dr. Gary LaFleur, and I will moderate this session today. Appearing today as our finalist, Dr. David Whitney of Nichols. Between now and 2 o'clock, I will conduct a moderated interview with our finalists. This is how we will proceed. Audience members may ask questions of the candidates by submitting a written question on cards distributed by Dr. Bridget Scott and Ms. Chastity Rickwar. So y'all hold up y'all's hands so they know who to get the cards from. Yep. And you can bring them right to Bridget and Chastity, and they will be bringing those up to me. The questions will then be delivered to me at the podium, and then I will directly address the finalists with the question. If you need a card, please raise your hand and one will be delivered to you. Please submit only questions on the submission cards, and please lend these proceedings your full and quiet attention. You might want to turn off your cell phone ringer, things like that. Okay. You got one for me? Yeah, I'll take that. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, these are being recorded as well, so you can check these out later on tape. But we're going to start. The first thing we're going to do, Dr. Whitney, is that you may begin with a brief introductory statement, and we're going to hold that to about 5 minutes. You have the floor.
All right. Can people hear me in the back? They told me to sit here, so that's why I'm sitting here, at least to standing up. So I of course don't know, what questions you're going to ask. So I'm going to use my 5 minutes just to talk about what I think is important, something that kind of motivated me to apply in the first place. So I think I'm not going to talk a whole lot about my background. Most of you actually know my background. I've been here since 2011. I'm a full professor. I was faculty Senate president. I've been an advisor to the president for 7 years. I'm the faculty on BUDS, who deals with any kind of conflict resolution across campus. I've been the program coordinator for started as government and is now political science. For 14 years, I've been the department head of social sciences, which when I took over had 2 programs, now it's 4 programs, 3 in person, 3 online. I've been the department head there for 8 years. So that's what I've sort of done on campus. In terms of how I got here, one question I always like to ask is, why are you doing this in the first place? So why higher education? And for me, it was the experience of education that made me want to pursue it as a career. I wanted to find a way that I could get paid to continue to learn. And that's what I've done. So I've learned so much teaching classes, actually more teaching classes than I did as a student. But what sort of drew me in, especially to the liberal arts, I didn't know, going into college, I didn't know what I was interested in, or I didn't have it narrowed down. There were a lot of things I was interested in. So I took the approach of just I took classes in almost everything. It wasn't exactly efficient, but I mean, I was taking, I took econ, I took statistics, I was going all across campus. And I took a class called Fundamental Issues of Politics, which I actually kind of imported here and now teach as part of the political science program. And in it, it starts with great Greek tragedy. And so Aeschylus, Sophocles, and then you get into Plato and Aristotle, and the kinds of questions that were being asked and answered in those works really drew me in. Like, it was just immediately apparent that this stuff is what life is all about. Like, it's literally the meaning of life. Big questions. What is justice? What is happiness? Right? So that's what drew me into political science, but more broadly the liberal arts. And so I'm a true believer in the liberal arts. I'm a practitioner of the liberal arts. The liberal arts have enriched my life. My life is undoubtedly better because of the liberal arts. And so I think part of the reason that I'm running is I think we're in a crucial time, in our country certainly. There's doubts being raised about the value of an education to begin with in college. It used to be the case, it was automatic. Everybody respected the university. They saw value in a college degree. Every parent would say they wanted their kids to go to college. And that has changed. It's changed pretty significantly over the last 10 years especially. And within the college, or within a university, not all units are created equally in terms of their resources, in terms of their perception. So people are doubting a university education, but when you look at the division of a university, they're doubting more than ever the liberal arts and the value of the liberal arts. There's a perception that the liberal arts does things that aren't valuable to society, aren't important to life, and result in no jobs. And all of those things are fundamentally untrue. But what you need is you need somebody who's going to actively advocate and educate people as to the value of liberal arts. They don't know. They need their minds changed. It takes activity. You can't just sit back and expect people to come to you. So that is my motivation in terms of wanting to lead the college. I've done it, and I think I've done it effectively at the department level. I think I've proven at the university level through a variety of different institutions, including Faculty Senate, that I'm a good person to advocate for faculty, for students. I'm effective at it. I believe in what I'm doing. So in a nutshell, that's why I decided to apply.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Whitney. We're going to start with questions now. If you just walked in, the protocol for questions is you give your question to Chastity or to Bridget. And if you need another card, they can get you one of those. So that's what they're doing right now. So Dr. Whitney, the first question that has come in is about your first semester. So Dr. Whitney, what is your plan for your first semester in office?
So I think off the bat, you have to make sure, of course, that you're getting to know everybody. So, I have an advantage through a lot of the university level, committees and task force I've been on. I know more people than your average department head, I think, from administration to people in other colleges. So I'm used to interacting with people outside of my area. But that's what I would really focus on first, is getting a better sense of the landscape of exactly what's going on in every department in the college. So I would be visiting each department, certainly talking to department heads a lot, but also talking to the faculty in those departments, just getting a sense of what's important to them, of things that they see that they would like to see changed, potential problems, and also just getting to know better the strengths of each individual unit, because that's an important thing for the dean to be able to do. When I talk about an advocacy position, you need to know well, the accomplishments, the strengths of the various departments. So I think, the first, it's kind of foolish to come in with I'm going to do this, that, and the other immediately without talking to anybody, without having conversations. So a lot of it would be along the lines of doing that. And I think the timeline actually works well for that, right? That you're starting, people may think a little awkward in the middle of an academic year. You're starting in January, but that's kind of perfect, to do what I just said about going around to departments, and then once you hit August, you're really ready to roll, I think, with an agenda.
Okay, thank you. Okay, second question is, how will you ensure that grade inflation in the College of Liberal Arts can be eliminated or reduced?
So I think the way that I look at it really is standards, right? That I think it's important to have and to set high standards. As a teacher, I've always looked at it like being a potential maximizer. Like that's my job, right? Everybody has different potential and in different areas, different abilities, different preparation coming in. But my job is to make people better. Right? I think that's true. It's not an overstatement. And that's how I approach it with myself, right? I always want to improve. I don't think we have anybody who has maxed out their potential, including me. So I think that's really important. So you need to set a high bar. And the way I talk to students about it is that I actually respect you. I respect you by setting a high standard. I'm going to help you reach that standard. I talked about this earlier in the meeting with the deans, but I can't stand the statement of we meet students where they are, and then people leave it at that. I think that's insulting, and it's stagnant, and it's counterproductive. I think you need to understand where they are, where they come in, but you need to help them get to where they need to be. And where they need to be is better than whatever they're coming in at. So you set a high standard, you help them reach that standard, you help them maximize their potential. It's a disservice to somebody who does mediocre work to give them an A, right? It's sending the wrong signal. By definition, if the majority of anything are doing something, that's the definition of average, right? We have a grade for that. It's called a C. It's one of our least awarded grades at the university. So how I would do it is the same way I would do it in my own department, which is not with an iron fist. It's not with penalties. It's with conversation, right? And there were people that were giving out by their own admission way too many A's. Why? It's an easy thing to do, right? You don't have to worry about complaining by students. They're going to give you nice evaluations, but you're doing the student a disservice, right? And this is the case. At our university, the most awarded grade is an A. At our university, over half the students are on the honor roll, right? Honor is supposed to be reserved for doing something special, for doing something good. The majority of people are doing it by definition, that's average. That's not good or excellent. So I think it's really important to give people what they deserve, what they earn. I think it's equally as important to help. That's a key component, right? There's an assumption of, oh, I set the bar, if you can't reach it, too bad, you're out of here. That's not the approach at all, right? You have to be actively helping people improve. And for a lot of our students, they actually have to learn how to learn. I've had seniors who the first time they read a book was in my class. That's embarrassing. There are students that don't know how to write. I give essay exams, right? And the end result is what you see at the end of the journey for these students is incredible gratitude. And this includes the ones getting B's and C's because they know that they truly earned those grades and they're thankful that somebody actually expects something from them, right? That again, I'm showing you respect by the fact that I expect you to do more, right? It's not coddling, babying you, oh, this is it, right? Every excuse you can make up not to do the work, that's okay, here's an A. So in our department, we've effectively done it. You can look at the grades. Part of it, I think, is bringing a realization to people that this has gotten out of hand. But secondly, it's setting an example. So in our department, we have 3 programs. One of the programs, was significantly better than the other 2 initially in terms of the grade distribution. The other 2 programs have calibrated themselves willingly, openly, towards that other program, right? The program coordinators, I think it's important for people running a degree program, especially, to have and to implement those standards. If I'm a department head and I give 70% A's, I can't go and talk to faculty members with any kind of credibility about why they need to have differentiation in their grades, right? And to be clear, I'm not talking about failing students. What I'm talking about is we have 3 grades that are always passing, A, B, and C, right? Nursing may be an exception if you can't get multiple C's, but A, B, and C, right? Those are all fine passing grades, and we basically never use the C. C. And the C is, by definition, the one that should be used the most. The B is getting used, a decent amount, and the A is just by far the most common rate. So I'm not talking about you got to have 10% here, 12% there, whatever. Just saying, let's differentiate between excellence and okay work, between excellence and good work, right? So the model for the college would be the same model for our department. It's persuasion. Persuasion, not penalty, has been enough to change the culture.
Okay, thank you. Next question. This is about policy. How do you view the relationship of administrators and policy? For instance, how do you decide when to act if no clear policy exists? And how do you decide to take initiative and create policy or lead by administrative action?
Well, I think that, in the absence of a policy, you use judgment, right? And I think I've taken full advantage of that in our department. The fact, if you compare anybody that was around when that department existed, 8 years ago, it's government and social sciences, 2 programs, government and sociology. If you compare that department to this department, it's night and day. And those changes have not been implemented primarily through university policies. The university policies more or less were the same the whole time. So they were done through initiatives, through departmental policies. So I'll give you an example. There is no currently university policy, when we're making a hire to include recruiting in the job description. For every one of our hires in social sciences, we have recruiting as an official job duty, and we actually make them give us a pitch. Give us your elevator pitch for why you should come to Nichols as part of the interview process, right? So that's not a university policy, but we do it as part of our policy. Another example would be when you're talking about course load and efficiency. So we've got 3 programs that they're consistently meeting or exceeding the 20-to-1 ratio the university would like to see. Terry could attest to that. If you look at the revenues generated for departments, we're always in that top 4 across the university. So we're very efficient, but we're also fair. So if you look at the faculty members in our department, from an instructor to a full professor in each program, every degree program, all right? So you look at criminal justice, you look at political science, and then you look at how many students those people teach. They are essentially equal. So I'm talking within 3 students in each program is the range of how many students each person teaches. That doesn't happen through coincidence, right? And so it's very, that's one thing I really stress is the fairness aspect, equity. University hasn't done anything about that, right? They're not going to say, well, it's not fair that you teach 20 students and this person teaches 180 students. They don't address that. But departmentally, I can address that. I can make sure that also our senior faculty, including me, I'm a full professor, right? I teach the intro freshman class all the time. Like, I'm the one that teaches that class. We all teach all levels. Faculty all get the opportunity to teach online. It's not the same faculty stealing all the online classes for themselves. That actually is a university policy, by the way. You're supposed to be giving equal access. It's not done. It's not enforced. So there's all sorts of things. There's all sorts of room, I should say, outside of university policy to do good things. And that's something that within my own department we've taken advantage of, and I would certainly take advantage of in terms of the college.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, how would you go about having the departments work together towards one common goal for the College of Liberal Arts?
Yeah, so that's a good one. This came up in the meeting with the deans as something that I mentioned as a goal of mine. So one advantage that I have with my background is I'm used to looking at things from the perspective of the whole, as as opposed to a particular unit, you know, and that begins all the way back to faculty senate. I mean, I was elected, before I was even tenured here, I was elected as faculty senate president, and I didn't run for it. I was drafted to do it, you know, which by a lot of senior faculty. They saw how I stood up to politicians that were coming in, how I asked questions of administration. They liked it, they selected me. As faculty senate president, I had to take into account the good of the whole university, right? In my own department, of course, I came from a particular program, but we have other degree programs in our department, and you can ask those faculty, and they will tell you that they are treated just the same as the political scientists, right? There's no special place because, oh, you're a political scientist, and you know. So I know how to treat people, you know, equally in that sense, but also within our department, you know, we emphasize we are the Department of Social Sciences, right? And that there's something that brings us together. There's a common mission. So we have a mission statement for the department, right, that transcends our individual programs. Likewise with the college, right? The college, and now most people probably don't know what it is, right? So that's a problem in and of itself. You don't know the mission of the college. That's something we could also look at, talk about, hey, does this mission still encapsulate what we want it to say now, right? It talks about creative, critical thinkers, right, in the free society. Notably, it doesn't say anything about developing for a career, which, you know, these days could be an issue, I think. But there's a mission statement. I think it's important for everybody in the college to think globally in that sense, that we're all working towards the same goal, and that the same general mission applies to all of us, so that we see each other not as these separate units, you know, they're little islands, but as all working together. And I've always done it. I mean, when I first got here within the first semester, I knew and met Paul Wilson, another department, Alan Alexander, another department, right? And now, I mean, I know everybody through work, through different things, but immediately I stepped outside of my department. That was just natural for me to do. And I think that we need to have more of that. Part of that, too, gets fostered not through just the formal stuff, but through the informal. So in our own department, you know, one way we've done team building is every semester I take the department out to eat, right? So all of those programs, they get to interact with each other outside of just the formal environment. That's really important, this informal thing. So that's something that I would want to lean into. I do think also it's important for purposes of recruiting for everybody in the liberal arts, the College of Liberal Arts, to be able to articulate why, in general, liberal arts matter, regardless of what your particular program. Before you get into your particular program of, oh, well, we've had lawyers or social workers or whatever, telling them why liberal arts matter. And that's doubly important in terms of the university, because I've heard it from some of the people in our own college tell their students, you just got to get through Gen Ed. Gen Ed is this little obstacle you got to get to before you can get to what you really care about. I have news for you. Gen Ed is what makes a university a university. Without Gen Ed, you are a technical or professional school. The Gen Ed is what unifies everybody, right? That's the whole point of it. So Gen Ed needs to become something that is emphasized in terms of its value. If we tell our students it's an obstacle to get through, how do you think they're going to approach those classes when they get into those classes? They're going to come in thinking it's a waste of their time. We need to do the opposite to them, right? So I think that's something that I would absolutely focus on, is making sure that people know the value of liberal arts. And the way that I describe it is pretty simple, I think, and that is that we study what makes life worth living. Everything we deal with is human stuff, right? It's human stuff only. It's not what the humans share with the animals and other parts of nature. It's that we focus on the human being, right? Human creativity, critical thought, music, art, right? All of these things, literature, it only applies to human beings. And these are the things that give our lives value, right? It's not the stuff that's determined by nature. It's the realm of freedom that we have, which is why the liberal arts are called the liberal arts, by the way. Right? Liber is Latin. It means free. Right? So these are the things that free people study. Right? And you're in a free society. This is what makes life worth living. You are a human being. That's why it's relevant to you. Right? It's relevant by definition to every single person.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is about artificial intelligence. With AI being such an accessible and utilized tool of student use, what leadership approach will you take for faculty to follow? And why is this approach necessary?
Well, there's two components to this, right? So there's one in which I kind of view it as what we used to do and maybe should start doing as sort of its own class, like a computer science class, right? We take that and go, oh, well, why do you need to know Excel? And, I kind of sympathize with that. Some people have moved away from computer science electives as whether they need to know this or that program, right, or has limited value. But I could foresee as one of those university required type classes, right? Or even if it's not university required, I'm making it a requirement in your area. Maybe instead of some other class you can take where you're actually taught about how to use AI, how it works, right? How it functions. I think within the classroom, I don't want to interfere with people's freedom within their own classroom to determine what they want their students to learn in their areas. Ultimately, that's up to the people leading those programs. So they may want their students to learn and to use AI, right, in their assignments, and they teach them how to do it. If you don't want your students to use AI, right, if that's part of your policy, I've got some proven, effective methods that I can share. And that's the approach I've taken in our own department about ways that you can at least cut down on the use of it. One is just the fact you have to have consequences, right? Nothing works. It's a cost-benefit analysis. This is easy, I can do it. If I get caught, you just say, please don't do it again, versus if I get caught, you fail the class, right? Those are two different things. And so you do need to make the expectations clear, very crystal clear. If you're not going to allow, I don't allow it. What is allowed, they need to know what the rules are, the standards. But then, once they're clearly explained, if they violate that, there's got to be a real consequence. So in our department, it's university policy, by the way, but again, people don't do this. If you catch somebody, right, in the case of academic dishonesty, you have an obligation as a faculty member to report it, period. If you don't want to give them a penalty in your class, that's your decision. But you do not have the authority not to report it. That's an actual policy, right? So people aren't following that. So in my department, make sure that they're following that. They know they have to follow that, right? And the consequences, again, that's ultimately up to them. I happen to use a harsher consequence. It's been very effective, right? Word gets around among students whether you're serious about enforcing the policy or not. So I'll give you a quick example. In online classes, it's especially difficult. We have online programs. So the way I structure it is you have to use, in your answers, only course material. So I teach Plato. At Plato, there's dozens and dozens of translations. So this is the translation we're using, right? So if you pull up something from Book 1 of the Republic and the language you're using is different than the assigned, that's it. That's academic dishonesty, right? So the burden comes on the student, too. If they say something nonsensical in the answer, I simply say, show me in the course materials where you got this term. Show me one, and the other side of that is you have to actually provide some course materials, all right? So I make video lectures, I have notes. You can't just say, textbook company, I'll import all your stuff and then run a class, right? That's not how you're supposed to teach in the first place. Again, some people do that. So it does take more effort on your part to do, but it makes it really easy, right? I see an answer, I know it didn't come from my materials. I tell the student, you have to show me where you got this in your materials. They can't do it. Academic dishonesty. That's it. So those kinds of techniques are things that, you know, we also in our department, if you look at the data, again, this is something people should be looking at, especially department heads. We have the data there. What do you think the average grade is in an unproctored WWW class versus a proctored WWW class? So it's almost 60% A's in unproctored WWW classes. That drops to about 25% in WWP classes, even when you control for the class. So you can take the same class, the same instructor teaching a WWW versus a WWP, and all of a sudden, the grades magically change. So that should tell you there's some cheating going on. So in our department, we've moved recently to all proctored for our online. And it wasn't mandated. Didn't tell them they had to move to it. It's something that they could choose, but the faculty have bought into the idea it's not good to have people cheating, that we want them to actually do their work, that it's unfair. We're giving away it's the same degree if you're an online student versus in person. So we want to have the same standard for online and in person. And in person, you can't do that cheating because you're taking the test in front of us. So when we get to online, it's only fair that those match. And faculty, that's something that has changed in our department, but it changed again through persuasion. And people bought into it without any kind of do this or else kind of mentality.
Okay, thanks. For those that have just walked in, wanted to make sure you knew how this was working today. If you have a question for our interviewee, you can ask Bridget or Chastity for a card. You can write that down and they'll bring it down. And we're going to end at 2 o'clock, so we get just about the halfway mark there. Okay, our next question is about students and their parents. So the questioner is wondering if you can speak to us about a specific instance where a student involved their parents in a dispute, complaint, or grievance. Maybe you can specifically discuss your approach to the parents.
Actually, I've been department head for 8 years, and we have 200 plus majors in all these degree programs, and there is not one case I can mention of a problem with a parent. And that's because anytime that even, any sort of from the first reach out, it's off the table. You're not in high school. These are adults, and I can't discuss your kid's performance in this class. So I send a very clear message, and I tell that to faculty, and I back faculty up on that at all. They do not have to engage a parent. So that's a simple answer for me. That's how I deal with it, and I tell faculty the same way. It's inappropriate. It's not within that scope. If a parent says something about this or that, I've heard this or that is happening, or my child says this or that, I don't just ignore what was said. I'll look into the thing, but the dialogue isn't with them, if that makes sense.
Okay. Since we're talking about parents, we have another question about parents, and that's more about what you were talking about earlier about recruiting. So what is your different approach when talking about the College of Liberal Arts to parents versus when you talk about this college to students?
Yeah, so the parents, I think, one thing, first of all, is I sell them really on just nickels in the first place. So we talk about, and by extension, that ends up being our department. I'll use examples, but we talk about the safety of the campus. We talk about the fact that we are going to get to know your child, right? We're going to know who they are. They're going to know us. There's going to be a level of interactivity at Nichols that you're not going to get at many of our competitors. In terms of the kinds of things they want to hear, I've actually found that the parents are more concerned about, and I guess it makes sense, right? They want that kid to move out and pay their own bills. So they're talking about, and less are doing that these days. So they want to hear about the jobs, first and foremost. More so than the kids, I think. So a lot of it, especially in liberal arts, is assuring them that, yes, our students do get jobs, we get good jobs. But I do bring in the other elements about it and, enriching the life. I can ask them the question, who doesn't have music that is meaningful to them? Like, who here doesn't listen to music? Right? And if you admit that, that's crazy. It's one of those things that's like, it doesn't happen. Like, you listen to different music, but there's nobody that doesn't feel the power of music, or that hasn't read a book that is meaningful to their lives, some work of literature. So I connect with them a little bit about that. The student, is more about, I do talk more about kind of the transformative life stuff, right? And kind of my experience as a student and what it did for me there. I'll tell them about the job, but they seem to be, to me, a little bit less of tunnel vision in terms of the job part compared to the parents. So that's really kind of the difference of the emphasis when I talk to them.
Okay, thanks. The next question is about the Culinary Institute. The Culinary Institute operates under a unique leadership model within the college. How would you as dean approach stabilizing and strengthening the culinary program?
Well, I think, so it's always been a weird situation with culinary. They've pretty much bounced around at every college. They've done their own thing. They've been part of everybody else. They say they're part of our college, and then you go to commencement and they list them separately from little. It's like, make a decision. I can't make that decision. I can't make that decision. I don't have the authority to make that decision. I certainly, not shy about telling people what I think should happen. But the way that I view it is the reason that they're in a college, I think, is that because they have to share the same structure as every other academic unit in a way, right? That we all have certain expectations academically about what you need to do. And in that profession especially, in that kind of program, it's very unique. A lot of the people from it aren't from traditional academic backgrounds. So you can't necessarily just assume that they know kind of like how academics works, right? So I think you could have it as a separate institute. If you did, you would still need to have some, whether it's from academic affairs or dean type figure to make sure that there is uniformity in academic policies across the university. What's really made it different is the fact that they have sort of an external and an internal element, and those two aren't always communicating with each other, historically, I'm saying. And so it is a bit bizarre that it's not like the department head, in other areas sort of does everything in the department, and in that area, they don't. Like, there's an element that they don't directly control. So I'm not sure that there's an easy answer. From the standpoint of the dean, my mentality would be to treat them just like everyone else, right? That you are part of our college. You're going to be treated like everyone else in the college, right? The same sort of standards or policies that would apply to social sciences, history, or languages and literature, or EMCL now. All of those things are going to apply to you as well.
Okay, thanks. Okay, what do you think distinguishes you from the other candidates for this position?
I think there's several things. One is what I'd say experience and credibility, right? And what I mean by that is if you look at it from the standpoint of a faculty member, I came as an assistant professor and I moved through the ranks, right? I'm a full professor. We have a lot of people that have been stuck at their rank for decades now, right? I moved up, and when I went, so I was faculty senate president and department head for a short time together as I was becoming an associate professor. The time I went from associate professor to full professor is the minimum allowable time in the PPM. So I continued to publish, I continued to go to conferences, I did research. This was while I was an advisor to the president. It was while I was a department head, right? And people always come up with excuses of while I'm raising a family, right? I've done all those things. No one has enough time, right? I'm busy doing this, I'm busy doing that. So it's like if I can do it as a department head, as an advisor to the president, as a member of every imaginable committee that, or task force that comes up on campus, you can do it as a full-time faculty member, right? So you set the example. That's the example I've set in my department. And if you look at it, all of those people are constantly moving up. They're doing what they're supposed to do, and they don't do it with any kind, it doesn't take any prodding from me, right? It's just, I think it's important. I set the example, this is the expectation, it's clear from when you're hired, this is it, you do it. So I have that from the faculty side. That's certainly there. I understand what it's like to do the job. I've done the job, and I've done the job at least according to the ranks we give at the highest level you can do it. Administratively, you know, I've been a department head for 8 years. That's unique among competitors. And I haven't just been a department head, I've done it well. I think that's important. I just won the award for academic administrator. It's a presidential award. It's Campus Walk, right? It's an acknowledgement you've done well. You can also just look at it in terms of, you know, subjective measure of faculty morale. Go talk to those faculty about, I mean, ask any of them about how their life is, how they like the leadership, how they like the department. Right? And you're going to find a similar story. It's going to be a positive story. They're undoubtedly better off now than they were when I started in the position, right? And that's because I have a natural faculty advocacy position, and that's what got me at Faculty Senate President. Like, no one has those qualifications. No one has been a department head, has been a full professor, right? In every realm you've been, Faculty Senate, that's the welfare of everybody on campus, right? If you look at the committees, the task force, I'm not just on these committees. It's one thing to say, you know, I'm on the compensation and morale task force and then committee. Big deal. A lot of people are. And you know what they do? They sit there and play on their phones the whole time. Congratulations, you're on the committee, right? I'm not on the committee. I'm leading these things, right? So when there is a strategic plan for the university, I'm the co-chair. When there's a strategic enrollment plan for the university, I'm leading the academic group, right? Faculty Senate, I'm leading the Faculty Senate. So there's a big difference between being involved and leadership. And I can confidently say, it's just an objective fact, I have more leadership experience than anybody that's running for this position. And it's not just the experience. The experience is kind of meaningless if you don't do a good job. I think the facts support that I've done a good, effective job, and I've got the relationships. It's not speculative with me. It's not in the abstract. I've already done it. I have the relationships with people across campus. The faculty morale compensation committee, which I lead, has all the deans on. It has the provost on, right? I've been the advisor to the president for 7 years. So I can get things done. I can talk to anybody on campus. I have good relationships. And I have a history of actually getting things done, and not just getting them done, but things that benefit people. So the vast majority of people in here have significantly higher salaries, I would argue, than they would have had otherwise. The president came in, he said he's serious about salaries. That compensation plan that many people in our college specifically benefited from. We were arguably the lowest paid college in terms of where we should have been by percentage. Hundreds of thousands of dollars have been allocated to our college in salary as a result of that compensation plan. I'm the architect of that plan. There's other people that were involved, that supported it, that helped. Who designed the plan, who sold it to the president? The lion's share of that was on me, right? And that's, again, most people aren't going to know that, but that's something that, I mean, when you're running for a job, you know, you're going to say, make sure people know. Like, there have been effective things in the PPM. You can't be forced to teach overloads. When I got here, you could be forced to teach overloads. That change happened, not exclusively because of me, but at the time that I'm Faculty Senate President. We got a lot of these things that started, that went through, that got put into the PPM that protect faculty, things that weren't there previously. And again, I just look at it as it's the combination of results, experience, and credibility. If you're a department head and you're struggling with a problem, I can help you directly. I don't have to send you or ask another department head to help you. I can tell you because I've actually done the position. If you're a program coordinator, if you're trying to start a new program, if you're bringing a program online, I can advise you on all of those things because I've done it. As the last part, I've served as the faculty on BUDS for 5 years. Any faculty member across campus has an issue, I'm the guy that the university has designated as the resource to talk you through those problems, right? Conflict resolution.
Okay, this is a slightly related question. It has to do with you advocating for faculty. So the question is, could you describe a time you had to advocate for faculty when you had to advocate for faculty needs in a way that required balancing financial constraints with fairness?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that fit into that category. So, you know, we talk about certainly the program coordinator positions. When I first came in, our program coordinators weren't getting anything. They weren't getting money, they weren't getting a course release, right? So as a department head, I went and talked at the time Dr. Westbrook and got them what they should have had from the start, really, because it was consistent with what some other programs were getting. They got the course release, and they got the stipend. But part of the conversation also involved me pointing out the fact that we're in that top 4 consistently of revenue, right? That we are, and I bring that up all the time too when you come to a new hire. I've been able to effectively argue to get new hires, but it's always based on production. Like, and faculty know that, right? That there's a fairness element to you're producing, you're drawing in students, like we're making money that is being rerouted to others in many cases. And so we've been able to keep a limited amount of that because of the production. Policy-wise, you know, there's all sorts of times where I've advocated, and I can say that it's for faculty in my department, but honestly, it's usually not. I don't make that argument often. I usually use, I operate on principle, and I like to think I'm practical as well, but I'll talk about it in general fairness terms for all faculty, right? So when you get into a situation where, you know, we had the budget crisis, for instance, and they were forcing people to teach a class for free. You know, I strongly argued against that, and actually heard the president use a direct quote from me when he described in the spring semester why he went away from it, which is that it is taking money from faculty, it's taking money out of faculty's pockets, and he had always said, that was a line he used frequently, I'm not going to take money from faculty, right? So that's another thing I would just stress too, is that there have been a lot of situations where I think no one is really speaking up, and I'm the one that speaks up, right? So after IDA, not the semester of IDA, you know, after the double whammy of IDA and COVID, I wrote a letter to the president about standards and the importance. I thought we were losing our culture of standards, right? When they had budget cuts, and I didn't hear much, you know, I didn't hear anything much from the university other than exasperation and worry across the board for faculty. And so what I decided to do, I thought I had an obligation as a department head. I called a meeting of all department heads to discuss the situation. Collectively, the department heads came up with a list of questions and issues that they wanted the administration to ask, and they did, right? And the funny thing about that, too, is that, you know, I'm doing this at a time in which I am the advisor to the president, right? So it's seemingly you're asking questions, you know, that's seemingly risky. A lot of people wouldn't be willing to do that because they would say, I have a lot potentially to lose, but I thought it was the right thing, and so I did it. You know, that's I could have lost that position easily. The department head, I actually used the line a few times. I've told administrators if they want my job, they can apply for it, but otherwise let me do what I'm supposed to do. I've said that. You know, so, but I don't say it in front of them. I mean, I just said it in front of you, but I don't say it in front of other people, and I say it in the context of a long-standing relationship and mutual respect, right? So there's a line there, and I'm direct, but I'm direct in a way that is not alienating to people, right? That I maintain, they know that I'm gonna tell them the truth, but they also know that it's coming from a good place. And so there's no severed relationships here, you know, and I like to point out that, you know, when it was Dr. Murphy, Lynn Gillette was sort of infamous in terms of people not getting along with him, or him, you know, not getting along with him maybe, but I was able to effectively do that as faculty senate president, right, where there was no bullying going on, things were getting done. You know, Dr. Westbrook, now Dr. Keller, different presidents, the president of the UL system, Dr. Henderson, I met him during the job search for Dr. Clune. I asked him some very tough questions in our first meeting, and it went from that being our first meeting to when he ran for president of LSU, he called me and asked me to be one of his references, right? So I think there's a history of being able to, on one hand, stand up for what's right, not shy away from it, but also maintain good relationships.
Okay, thanks. Some of what you were just talking about was about making decisions. So this is probably going to be our last question. What data is important in making decisions for the College of Liberal Arts? And to what extent will that data inform your decision-making process?
So the thing is, for data, you've got to have good data. You have to have reliable data, and the data should be shared. So that's been one of my frustrations, is that I do use data pretty frequently, but the data is not, on the university level, it's not shared the way it should be. I think that there's a sense of almost treating everything as confidential and top secret, but it really shouldn't be. So, you know, when you're talking about things, for instance, the grade distribution, it's a good example of that. When we first started, you know, there were probably several years where I got those grade distributions and didn't really notice what was going on, because they show you the spreadsheet, and I would have to sit there. It wouldn't give you the percentages, right? You would have to go read the spreadsheet, do the percentages yourself, and then now we have these nice, you know, graphs and things like that, and it shows the percentage. And so seeing it that way is striking, right? It's easier to track, and now we do that. So every semester, I send the program coordinators the grade distributions for their areas, right? And if there's a problem, if there's a class that's standing out, they address it. The efficiency that I mentioned is really important to know. When Terry Burrow sitting there, you know, says we would like to get to 20-to-1 ratio. Well, that's helpful to know. The goal is helpful to know, but I also need to know where I'm actually at in that ratio, right? So we have that data. We have the data that shows how many people each faculty member are teaching. And you can break it down online, traditional, and it's incredibly helpful when I'm making those decisions about course loads, you know, for faculty. And I said it didn't happen by accident, right? So that stuff didn't happen through happenstance. It happened because I had the data and used the data effectively, and I'm well aware, of course, also of the revenue generation, you know, how many students we have, of the salaries that we're making, and that, relatively speaking, we are turning a profit in areas that a lot of other departments aren't, right? So you better believe that's going to be part of the context if we need a new faculty member and I go to the administration. So I think data is incredibly, there's no excuse these days with the dashboards, the technology, for people not to have access to that. It shouldn't be the case that, you know, it has to be by permission, only 10 people, you know, get in, and let's pray they share it with everybody else, because they don't share it with everybody else. So I think it needs to be one of those things that department heads have access to all this stuff, and that they're told if they need to be told how, you know, to use it or where to look. There's also a very valuable data set that we have. Dr. Fry actually brought this to my attention In terms of its utility, during our program review, we had a program evaluation, I think it was in June, and they get to the alumni part and tracking alumni and things like that, and she said, you checked out Lightcast, and I'd heard about Lightcast. Essentially what it is it tracks the students that we've had, right, that have come through your programs. You can look by the degree, sort them by degree, and by years that they graduated, okay? And then it shows you the professions they've gone into. It shows you other educational outcomes. It shows you the average salary. You can sort it by levels of confidence, for the data. And so that stuff is incredibly valuable. When I'm talking about the liberal arts, you need to advocate for them. You need to have tangible evidence that your students actually get jobs, right? And the thing is, when I looked at other programs, of course I zeroed in on mine as a department head initially, but going into this, I look at other programs, and a lot of the other programs have favorable data, meaning that they're beating some of the programs in terms of the average salaries that your average person might think would be higher salaries, right? And so, but the story's not being told. And I think it's not being told because a lot of people don't know that we have it. It's relatively new. So it's only going to be as good as effective if people know it's there, have access to it, and know how to use it. But I absolutely would encourage that. The way I look at it is evidence, right? Evidence-based, informed decision-making. But I will say I'm not bound solely by that. Sometimes data's not good, sometimes it's incomplete, and there's plenty of room for subjective judgment as well.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Dr. Whitney, you may close with a brief concluding statement.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think I said everything that I wanted to say. I think from the institution standpoint, I'm simultaneously a safe bet and also an agent for change. Like the odds of me flopping are incredibly none, like zero basically. It's not going to happen. If I'm not good at something, I will become good at it or I would quit. Like I'm not one of those people that is going to, if I am terrible at something, so I'll give you an example, Ross. I am bad. I've given it a try. I'm not good at art. I appreciate art, other art, I can do that, but as a practitioner, I'm terrible. After a while, I realized I didn't have that aptitude, so I'll leave it alone. I'm not going to pretend to be an artist, right? So I've done all sorts of things in a preparatory manner that have demonstrated that I know how to lead people. Usually people are asking me to lead them. This is unique to me that I have to actually run, and sort of try to sell myself on something, but it's usually people wanting me or picking me to lead them. I've done it at the university level. I've done it at the department level. I'm a true believer and will be a passionate defender of the liberal arts. I take that head on. It doesn't take any convincing. You don't have to prod me to do it. If there's a problem, I'm the kind of person that's going to address that problem. I'm proactive. I anticipate problems. If something arises, I deal with it quickly. I don't let it fester and get worse, right? I try to create an environment, too, that people actually want to show up to work. And I think that's the case. If you look at my department, the people here, they want to be here. They're happy. They're thriving. They're incredibly productive. I don't micromanage. I don't have to micromanage. I guarantee you I won't do your job. The question is whether you'll do your job, right? As long as you're doing your job, there's no problem, right? Those are problems I've had with the people who weren't doing their jobs. I refuse to do their jobs, so they're not going to be here, kind of thing. But that's good for people who do their jobs. Like if you do your job honestly and you try, you want to see consequences. You want to see people who don't try. You don't want to get the same things as them. And if you do good work, you want that good work to be acknowledged. I acknowledge good work. I think that's the other thing I would end on is if you look at something like Faculty Senate, I created it. This wasn't a committee. Wasn't an idea from another institution. I came up with the Faculty Appreciation Awards. I went around to athletics, to Sodexo, to parking, to all these different units on campus, to solicit prizes for faculty. And we would have department heads every semester submit the name of an outstanding faculty member, and then we would award prizes through Faculty Senate. University didn't do that, right? That was my way of saying, how can we reward merit on this campus in a situation in which there's no such thing as merit pay, right? And I consistently got thanks from faculty members of how meaningful it was for them, even if they didn't win a prize, to know that their department head had acknowledged that they were doing good work, right? And to my dismay, it didn't take long after I was out of the position. It lasted another 2-3 years, and faculty appreciation awards are nowhere to be seen now. And all they had to do was just continue. Like, the stuff was already there. You just had to administer it, and you didn't do it. But that's an example of my mentality of going out. I did all of that extra work for the benefit solely of good faculty members. Like, I got absolutely nothing out of that. None of those prizes went to me. All right, and that's my natural mentality.
Okay, thanks. We're going to end it there. I want to say thanks to you, Dr. Whitney, for your interest in serving Nichols. Thank you for the audience for participating. We appreciate getting your questions. We got through most of those questions. I know we didn't get through all of them, but we appreciate you sending those up. Now, there's 2 ways as audience members you can still participate if you like. You can submit comments on this and other candidates this week. And the way you can do that is one of 2 ways. You can submit anonymous comments, written comments in the comment box. I think there's the comment box is down there right now, but it's going to be living in the Office of College of Sciences and Technology in 149 Kilgen Hall. So if you want to drop your comments off there, you can do that. Or you can submit a written comment by email to cola.search. That stands for College of Liberal Arts. cola.search@gmail.com. So that's not a nichols.edu address. cola.search@gmail.com, and all comments will be reported anonymously. It's 2 o'clock. Thanks for being here, everyone. We're going to do this on Thursday and Friday as well from 1 to 2. Thanks for being here.